Wagwan fam, much love to you all. Welcome to our podcast, The Higher Level, where we banter about a broad range of trending geopolitical topics. I'm here with my Latino brother over in California, the child genius that is Professor Sanchez.
And I am here with my Jamaican brother from South London, the enigmatic Dr. Wagwan.
We have a lot to talk about this week, so as our Mary Queen wisely says, keep calm and carry on. Could
It's wise
US
words.
sanctions force Huawei out of the smartphone game forever?
Once again, straight to the point as always. In the face of US sanctions, the smartphone giant Huawei stands to lose a significant, possibly all of its share of the mobile phone market, or in the worst case scenario, leaving the industry altogether, according to the analyst Go Mingji from TF International Securities. He's given a good analysis, actually. Huawei's
Mm,
rise as a global telecommunications leader and 5G juggernaut was rapid. It was
mhm,
founded in 1987, founded by the People's Liberation Army of the Chinese military. The company made its mark by building out network infrastructure in rural areas in China and investing heavily in research and development. Huawei had the highest volume of global smartphone shipments in the first half of 2020.
Wow, that's amazing, man.
Yeah, from basically nothing to a global juggernaut of technology. Really, really meteoric rise. It's like creating Sony in
Hmm,
20 years.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? You got the government backing right behind you.
Yeah, you can't really lose. And if you keep spending money on research and development, you're going to
Hmm,
keep making technological advancements.
hmm,
So, in May of this year, the U.S. Bureau of Industry and Security, BSIS, put out a notice addressing Huawei's continued use of U.S. software and technology without a proper license.
mhm,
Go's report noted that even if Huawei couldn't find a replacement supplier for its software and for its microchips, there's a high probability of market share loss due to Huawei's specific pricing and supply chain disruption. So the Trump administration has moved to block exports to Huawei.
mhm,
And this was really prompted in large part by the Congress. So
hmm,
it seems like the Congress of the United States is really turning against China, and they've decided that they have to wipe out China's highest technology companies. Huawei is a prime candidate because it's really the backbone of China's cyber war infrastructure and cyber surveillance infrastructure.
hmm, hmm,
In a paper released by the Chinese People's Liberation Army, they said that one of the first attack vectors that they would use against Taiwan was a cyber attack to destroy Taiwan's internet, communications infrastructure, power, just bring the country back to the Stone Age before a bullet was fired.
mhm,
So that white paper was released publicly, and that really, really upset a lot of people. It shows how little the Chinese government thinks of international opinion, how little the Chinese government thinks of the Taiwanese people, that it wants to send them back to the Stone Age,
hmm,
and how little it thinks of the American people. Probably thinks we're assholes and stupid morons that can't even read,
hmm,
simplified Chinese characters released in the public domain. And now we're looking at the first prong of that attack. Huawei was seen as the biggest threat to the biggest attack weapon that China has in its cyber war arsenal. And the US is now responding to that, and it's about to break Huawei and crush it.
hmm. They've been making the news all around the globe over the last several months, even way back into last year. Nations, all the developed nations around the world, they're not liking them. They're all afraid of their spy technology, and the UK, Australia, US, Canada, they're all saying no to their 5G network being installed in their country. No one wants them. And why so? Why would you? They got, like you said, government backing, military background, and they go on public with all these statements against Taiwan, wanting to take them out. Why would you let this foreign entity into your country and build your 5G network? Forget about those weirdos, those smaller groups who think 5G waves are going to turn their kids into mushrooms and flowers. Forget about all that talk. Why would you let Huawei come into your country and you know put, like I said, put down all that infrastructure, and you have no idea whether they have servers back in their country siphoning and collecting all this information and data on all your citizens?
That is a really good question. Why indeed? The
Mm,
United Kingdom was, and much of the European Union, by the way, were in favor of Huawei and were going to include Huawei in their bids for telecommunications infrastructure.
mm.
And that was mainly UK and Germany.
It's
And the US was furious, and I think rightly or wrongly, they threatened the United Kingdom and told them, listen, if you do this, we
mm,
can't trust your computer networks. We're not going to share intelligence information with you. And the British kind of, they were a little bit upset and they thought that the Americans were overreacting. The
mm,
Americans, they're serious. They're not going to send their secrets over a Huawei powered network.
hmm That's right, man. You know, at the end of the day, those that were upset were the fat cats that with empty pockets. They were gonna line these deals. All these deals are big, big money, man. You know,
It's
they're
all about
big
the
money.
mullah, isn't it?
That's right. And those fat cats, they're missing out on it. So they're like, oh shit, man. How am I gonna pay for that Benz? How's my wife gonna buy that, next level 10, 12-inch thing that's gonna go between her legs?
Yeah, good question. The new models are expensive.
Man, they're just getting bigger and bigger, man. Bigger, wider. It's all about width and girth now, bruv. But anyway,
And
let's move on.
surely there has to be a limit to biological human decent. Okay, let's move on.
We have to move on, man. We create another segment like that in the future where we all talk about different models, and then we bring on some of these girls to talk about why they like different models.
Talk
Hey,
about.
hey, any of you listeners out there, send us an email. You want to be part of it? Join the show. That's cool with us. Send us an email. Japan, India, and Australia aim to steer supply chains around China. They don't want to deal through China no more. They want to go around them. Tell us more about this, bro.
Yeah, Japan, India, and Australia, they agreed on Tuesday to launch an initiative to achieve supply chain resilience. That's what they actually called it in public. In the Indo-Pacific region. Notice they don't call it the Asia-Pacific region anymore. They're calling it the
Mm,
Indo-Pacific in a nod to India as being an equal anchor because of its position in Asia.
man,
And
some funny wordsmithing right there, buff.
they're using these kind of little words to kind of it's like almost a gang feud where they're kind of dissing each other with small
Mm-hmm.
little hints.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you, you,
So
you think you think the diplomats over in the CCP, you think they're gonna understand this?
I think they're going to be kind of angry if they explain it to the boss, but I don't think they'd explain it to the boss because they'd
No,
probably be scared
be
that he'd
too
kill them.
scared, man.
They'd be too scared, yeah.
Mm,
But they got together. They had a bit of a discussion, and they made this announcement that they're gonna get their supply chains out of China, and Japan is gonna work to get factories set up in India, factories set up in Southeast Asia, and it's going to move the factories which have the highest profit margin in China. So the ones which China makes the most profit off of, they're moving them out of China and putting them somewhere else. So they're really hitting the Chinese government in the checkbook. And this interesting development comes amid escalating Sino-American tensions. It's and a standoff on the China-India border, the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of nations are really rethinking their supply chains in China. When China cut off medical supplies to most of the world and said, "That's it. We're not sending any more medicine overseas." Not just surgical masks, I might add, but actual
mm-hmm.
drugs and medicine for people because the
Mm-hmm.
Chinese thought we're going to need this medicine for our own citizens. We're not going to send it overseas. Well, a lot of countries thought, you know what, we can't risk this happening again. We're bringing a bit of supply chain diversity. We're going to bring some home. We're going to put some in other countries. We're going to have multiple countries. We're not going to put all of our eggs in China's basket anymore.
Mm.
And yeah, it seems like this was a short-termist move by the Communist Party of China, and Australia's relations with Beijing are getting worse and worse by the day. And meanwhile, India and Japan have unresolved boundary disputes with China. They've both escalated. China seems to intrude in Japanese territory, and it's killed those unarmed Indian soldiers. So
Mm-hmm.
they're really warming things up now. Japan, India, and Australia. And whether Uncle Sam steps in or not, I'm not sure. I think Japan, India, and Australia are kind of at a little bit of a crossroads. They're gonna counter China whether Uncle Sam steps in or not. But you can guarantee Uncle Sam's gonna step in. He's Uncle Sam always joins the party.
Always wants a piece of that pie, man.
Absolutely.
Amid tensions with Beijing post Galwan clashes, Indian Navy warships set sail for the South China Sea. These are big military moves.
It's huge. The Indian Navy is now sailing through the Taiwan Strait between Taiwan and China. China's backyard, really. India has never done this before in its entire history. Two
Mm,
warships of the Indian Navy. They've set sail to join the US Navy destroyers in the South China Sea, where Beijing has been expanding its presence since 2009 by building artificial islands, expanding its military outposts. The vessels have been deployed all along the Indian Ocean, and especially towards the Malacca Straits, used by China to move towards other countries. A report by the news agency ANI quoted government sources saying that soon after the Galwan clash broke out, in which 20 of our soldiers were killed, the Indian Navy deployed one of its frontline battleships to the South China Sea, where the People's Liberation Army's navy objects to the presence of any other force claiming majority of the waters are part of its territory. So
mm,
during the deployment, the American Navy had also deployed its destroyers and frigates, and the Indian warships, I should say, were continuously maintaining contact with their American counterparts and practicing their procedures and maneuvers.
mm.
So I
Yeah,
don't know.
man, it's interesting to see the Indians now joining the South China Sea conflict. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah,
sending
this
it
is unexpected.
straight into their backyard. Remind me again, what was the CCP trying to accomplish by killing those unarmed Indian soldiers?
That's a very good question. I don't, I don't know. I think it's backfired big time. Instead of making the Indians scared, it's actually pissed them off so much that they're sending their navy and they're building up their naval presence to challenge China on multiple fronts.
Hmm. So they should. Everyone should be rallying up against the CCP. They can't just go, okay, according to these ancient history kind of maps, these lands and these seas used to belong to China, and therefore they can, take over right now. I mean, have you seen the pictures of these maps? They're stupid, bruv. They're like hand drawn, mythological kind of scripts, man. It's like if you wanted to go play treasure hunting, and you decide to get your little 6-year-old to, draw up a map with crayons. That's the kind of map that the CCP are pointing to and using and saying, this is their territory over here in the South China Sea. That's how dumb it is.
And that's what they use as historical precedent to say that this is why all of the countries in the neighborhood belong to us,
Yeah, fam.
including Tajikistan. Apparently, that was last week. So
That's right, fam. And I think, if I remember correctly, someone drew a sea serpent in the bottom corner of that map.
does the serpent belong to the Chinese Communist Party as well, or is that just not claimed?
Don't know, bro. Maybe that was Xi Jinping's signature. You know, he's like, when he did his final review, he was like, bring me that here. And he's like, this is a good map, man. But he needed to add his point, so he decided to draw a sea serpent.
I find it alarming that his signature is a satanic symbol.
Man, maybe he thinks he's some kind of ocean dragon, man.
Wow, that's deep.
This is this is all interesting stuff, Before this pandemic, everyone in the world was talking about globalization, manufacturing all around, and being like industry supplies to other nations in specific things. And China, big manufacturing industry, they're supplying the whole world. And everyone was like, yeah, man, this globalization, all this money move around, this is great stuff. Now, During the pandemic, all these nations, they're thinking about more nationalism, nationalistic kind of approaches, and how they can spread out the supply chain so they don't get jabbed with the middle finger up in their, nether regions when things go south. And now they also realize that there's a big bully, there's a big elephant sitting in the middle of the planet. Okay, and that is the CCP government. And now everyone realizes this rotting elephant needs to be taken care of. And everyone's riling up. It's all good stuff, man.
It's a it's a the way I see the CCP is a gangster who's taken 1.5 billion civilians hostage, and
Mm,
he's using those civilians in his slave labor workshop.
mm-hmm,
And he's got his own little posse of gangbangers working
mm-hmm,
for him. But yeah, like you said, the majority is just taking 1.5 billion people hostage, and
mm,
people are gonna stand up to it. We're already seeing that people have just gotten fed up with the
mm-hmm.
Communist Party.
It's a little bit dangerous because all this riling up, all these pent up tensions, it only leads to one thing: war.
It is it is
You
a
know,
very real danger.
and hopefully we never get to that point where we are discussing that war is going to become inevitable. Right now, we're just pointing to the facts that there's a lot of tension. And look, and then this stupid ass CCP, they're not doing anything to ease the tensions. China's military said it launched two carrier killer ballistic missiles into the South China Seas just a few days ago. But the US said it was four of these bomber missiles. One was lost. One was found by civilians near the launch site. No, that's a crazy thing in itself. And another one missed the target. What a joke, man. These ballistics. The communist military threatening US aircraft carriers and then misfiring all their missiles during the demonstration. That is stupid clown, absolute circus stuff right there, bro.
Circus stuff is right. One of their New Year's fireworks actually went backwards and hit the province of Yunnan. It, it's
Oh no,
true.
we shouldn't laugh, man. We shouldn't
Luckily,
laugh.
it didn't kill anybody. It didn't
Okay,
kill
that's
anyone.
good. That's good, bro.
It didn't kill anyone. It was found by civilians later, and the civilians were looking at it and they're like, "Why did the Chinese military bomb us? We don't understand." The poor
Man,
people, they were scared. They're like, what's happening? Why is China
ah,
bombing us?"
they must have been so fearful.
I think if you're in China and the army is bombing you, the first thing that pops into your head may not be, "Oh, this is a mistake." It might be, "Oh, the Communist Party is doing another purge."
Yeah, another
Maybe that's what they were
revolution.
thinking. Maybe they were thinking that, like, "Oh no, they're starting to kill Chinese people. Oh God, not again."
Mm, bad stuff.
Yeah,
But
I
very
just want,
embarrassing stuff for those officials in the CCP.
yeah, the Indian Navy is in the neighborhood, so they wanted to demonstrate, hey, Indian Navy and American Navy, we're gonna fire some aircraft killing missiles in the
Mm,
general direction. We're not gonna hit there. They didn't hit anywhere near or aim them anywhere near the American or the Indian warships. That could have resulted in World War III. But yeah, they wanted to show off, and it failed spectacularly. I want to add that anti-ship missiles were perfected by the Soviet Union and the USA in the 1960s and 70s, which is why that
mm,
aircraft carriers, stay very, very far away from the coast and the shore because it's dangerous to get too close for the reason of missiles. But it
mm,
seems like China hasn't caught up with 1960s technology. And I don't think it's because their people are incompetent. It's probably maybe corruption or maybe fear, or maybe the smart scientists were just executed because maybe some communist leader felt threatened by very smart people.
mm. Very true.
Yeah.
Real possibility over there.
Contrast this, I would say, with the Taiwanese ballistic missiles. They have a Brave Wind ballistic missile. It's one of the most advanced ballistic missiles on the planet. It's at the cutting edge of targeting, ranging, and avionics. You know,
Mm,
I've said it a few times, but Taiwanese are professional at three things: food, microchips, and rockets. And I'm pretty sure with this Brave Wind missile, and who knows what else they've got in store, they will sink
Hmm.
the Chinese Navy before they even reach the beaches of Taiwan, because the Chinese think we're going to send millions of soldiers into Taiwan. No, Taiwan's going to sink your Navy before you even get close to the beaches. It's not going
Mm.
to be like D-Day Normandy. You're not even getting close to the beaches. I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure Taiwan, if they see a ship landing on a Taiwanese beach, they will see that as a failure. They do not want them anywhere close to the beaches because they know the Taiwanese, they're smarter, they have higher technology, but they do not have the manpower, so they need to use their brains to fight this.
Hmm. Just imagine, right? If one of the missiles hit one of these US ships,
It
like you
would down
said,
it for sure.
it would, like, well, yes, but then, like you said, it would instigate, you know, possibly war. Now, what I want to say is they've messed up badly. They misshot their ballistic missiles. What if they couldn't stop the missile from, say they were on target and it was going straight to them and they wanted to abort and they couldn't abort? Imagine that.
That's actually a very
They,
dangerous scenario.
since they're already making mistakes because he can't shoot straight, quite likely they can't even stop it when they want to, put on their scare tactics.
If they sink a US carrier or if they sink an Indian warship, it's going to result in a response. Absolutely.
That's terrible, bro. We don't want no war. You know, we just want to get through this pandemic and get on with our lives.
And Taiwan doesn't want war. Taiwan just wants to live in peace and just stay independent. They don't want any war. But China keeps threatening them, flying aircraft closer and closer, and increasing the risks of war. When you have militaries of both sides getting their equipment together, accidents
Hmm.
happen. Like you said, an accident could happen.
Hmm.
Wars have started this way. So China is being very irresponsible by shooting off missiles that they can't even control.
Hmm.
And then, and I mean, maybe the next time they're going to shoot off a missile and it rebounds and hits China and it's going to kill people. This time, fortunately, it didn't kill civilians. But
No.
I'm sure if they shoot the missile again, maybe it'll hit some civilians. These are
Oh.
serious missiles. They're very powerful. If they
Mm.
fly back, if they land in the sea, they're not going to kill anybody. They'll just kill ocean wildlife, which I assume the communists don't care about. But
Terrible.
they could very possibly kill Chinese people, Chinese civilians. But the military doesn't care. I don't think the military really cares about the common people in China.
Mm. A high-profile Australian journalist got detained in China. What's this about, man?
Well, Australia and China used to have a really happy relationship, and it kind of annoyed the U.S. But it seems like Beijing is really screwing things up. They detained an Australian news anchor working for their state-run English language television network CGTN. The detention of the journalist Cheng Lei. It's a new blow to the rapidly deteriorating relations between the two countries. And China is even warning its citizens of traveling to Australia. Likewise, Australia is building up its defenses against China. This is quite a serious escalation for their detention of an Australian citizen. I
Mm.
think, I don't know many Australians. I think I've met a few in passing, but if they want to travel to China, it would be a pretty bad idea right now.
Hmm. They've got a very interesting relationship. Over the last 10 years or so, they've kind of been feeding off each other's economy and boosting each other. Well, even during the GFC, the mines over in Western Australia, which is like the left side of the Australian country, when when the GFC was happening, their mining industry was booming, and the biggest receiver and purchase of all these kind of materials were the CCP. And then they were like, ah, yeah, you are my brother from another mother. But now they're like at each other's throats. But the funny thing is, right, Australia, you don't hear much about their influences around the world. I certainly don't hear it over here in the UK. I mean, we like Australians. A lot of British every year they go over and they go to this suburb called Bondi and they make life over there.
They make love or life?
They just spread their seeds everywhere.
Oh my God.
They love it. All over Bondi Beach, man. Maybe it's all over in the oceans.
Oh my
Maybe
God.
that's why the waves are so frothy, bro.
Oh my God.
But
Oh my
anyway,
Lord.
so what do you think the Australian government are gonna do about this? Do you think they really care?
I think they're probably getting pretty upset, and they're going to escalate tensions. They can't respond in kind because the Australian government has laws. It's a democracy. It has to follow its legal system. So they can't just detain somebody who's of Chinese ancestry, and they won't. They're not just going to pull some random Chinese citizen and say you're in jail now because we're having a fight with your government. So the Chinese government is really hitting a low blow because it's hitting Australia where it can't hit back. They can detain Australian citizens without due process, without following any laws. But Australia is not going to do the same to Chinese citizens because it's a country that respects the rule of law, and it's a multicultural country. They're just not going to imprison people for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
But this is going to really piss off the Australians. Can't respond by detaining Chinese citizens, but they can respond by sending military assets to the South China Sea. So that's probably how they're going to respond. Maybe they'll reduce immigration from China. Uh, I think they'll probably do that next. Um, there have already been some warnings where China said, you know, if you want immigration, you can't get it from Hong Kong and you can't get it from Taiwan. You can get it from China, or you can get it from Singapore, or you can get it from Malaysia. But Hong Kong and Taiwan, you shouldn't take immigrants into Australia from those two countries. I would ask, I mean, I'm not an Australian, but what the question I would ask to the Australian people is, are you going to take that? Are you going to let another country dictate which countries you can take? If you want to take Taiwanese citizens, if you want to take Hong Kong citizens, if you want to take citizens from Mars, why should the Chinese Communist Party be allowed to tell you what to do? If you want people from Mars or Venus or whatever, it's up to you. Why does another country tell you what to do? Are you going to take that?
Mm. I have to say, during this time of the BLM movement, which, is all about Black Lives Matter, I get that. However, it does also lead the movement in fighting against racism. Now, I can't help but wonder because I'm an ethnic brother, you know, I'm a man of color. I can't help but wonder. Cheng Lei, man, that doesn't sound like a Caucasian Australian. If it was a Caucasian Australian journalist that got detained, would that journalist receive different and more firmer response from the Australian government? That is my question. That is obviously just a rhetorical question.
I think you got to ask two questions. One, she was working, Cheng Lei was working for the Communist Party. So she was an Australian citizen, but she was working for the Communist Party. So the Australian government is probably not going to expend too much resources in protecting a citizen who was working for the for the Communist Party. At the end of the day, what's happening to this journalist is tragic, but if you go to sleep with a tiger, don't be surprised if the tiger wakes up and bites you.
Hmm.
So, if, for example, I don't know, a CNN, I'm not sure what news networks. I assume they have some news networks in Australia. I don't know what they're called, but let's just say the Australian CNN, the journalist gets detained in China or Hong
Hmm.
Kong. It'll probably start a diplomatic crisis, um, and I think the Australian government would put pretty significant pressure on the Chinese government to release that journalist. And the Australian government can do a lot to pressure the Chinese government. If the Chinese government doesn't comply, the Australian government can say, "We're going to start confiscating assets. You guys have uh, billions of dollars invested in Australia. You you impounding our journalists from CNN, from Australian CNN. I don't know what it would be quite serious. But in this case, this is annoying, really exacerbating the tension between the Australian government and China. Um, so I do agree that things are going to get worse. But I would say one thing that the Australian government did make a formal plea to the Chinese, saying we have a lot of Hong Kong citizens, dual Hong Kong and Australian citizens, and the Australian government said very clearly to the Chinese, we understand that you view those Hong Kong citizens as belonging to you, but they have an Australian passport, and we will consider it an attack on our citizens if you detain them without charge. So that is something I must say that was not made clear by the British government. So the British government didn't really apply the same kind of protection to its dual British Hong Kong citizens. So I think the Australian government would have some level of protection for their
Hmm.
citizens. They would have to. They're generally they're just not going to be happy with another government
Hmm.
just detaining them at will. But in
Hmm.
this special case, she was working for the Communist Party. There's not really too much that the Australian government is probably willing to do for somebody like this.
Mm. The CCP, they got a real strange system. One, they use their own citizens as pawns. If things go south, they just lay the blame on them. Man, it's a strange world over there. They're very, they're all a hated group. I mean, look at what they're doing now. Well, not what they're doing right now. I mean, they've been doing it for a while, but now they're going public and they're stating it. They're pushing to limit the Mongolian language over in their country. I mean, okay, you look at the history, they got a lot of hate towards Mongolians and the Genghis Khan, because Genghis Khan, man, he was a
He
gangster,
was,
bro.
he was
He
a
just
brutal man.
he was a brutal man, but in those ancient times, those dark ages, you needed to be a bad guy like that. And he took over. Yes, he raped and he pillaged, and you could say, oh, it's all part of that Mongolian culture. It's not a good thing, but man, it was ancient times. It was a long time ago when men roamed the earth like beasts, and it was all about survival of the fittest. So
What is it about now in the streets of high streets of the world now? It's the survival of whoever has the nicest nail polish.
that's right. Or who has the most followers on a social network?
Yeah, I don't know where to start. So they're not happy with wiping out the Uyghurs. Now they want to wipe out the Mongolians too. Um,
Mm,
it seems like the Chinese Communist Party, who by the way is not really a true communist party, and not even I would not even consider them Chinese. So they're not Chinese. They're not a communist party, but they are the government of China. It seems like they want to wipe away every single language that isn't Mandarin. So they're de-emphasizing Mongolian. They're de-emphasizing the Uyghur language. Cantonese, if you just search Google and see what's happening to the Cantonese language, but also the Hokkien, Fujianese dialects, the Hakka language. They're
mm,
not even allowed to call them languages. They call them just slang versions of Mandarin, as if they're
mm,
somehow lesser than Mandarin. Like the Fujianese, they speak they don't speak the real language. They don't speak a real Chinese language.
mm,
And this is not my viewpoint. I'm paraphrasing what their viewpoint is. So this is pretty sick actually. And the Mongolian people are protesting, and they're trying to defend an aspect of their culture. You take away a people's language, you're destroying part of their culture and their history. I don't know. I don't think they'll win. Unfortunately, I think the Chinese will steamroll them, just the way they steamroll everybody else in the Chinese
mm.
provinces. The Communist Party doesn't want individuality. It doesn't want unique culture. It wants everybody to be
The same
drone.
robot,
The same robots wearing
the same
you know,
model.
maybe the men wear a gray suit and the women wear a blue one. I don't know.
Mm, that's
Just
right. In this day and age, all we want is, people talk about diversity. Diversity in the community has a lot of benefits. There's diversity of thought in large corporations who want who put innovation at the forefront of the growth of their companies. They understand that diversity of thought and also equality in sex allows a company to grow. But the CCP, and I'll say it, I've said it before and I'll say it again, they're acting like Nazis. They want to make everyone assimilate to their way of thinking, and now they're only one language. This is like, imagine they did this to the UK. UK, where everybody speaks English. Yes, but the reason why we are so diverse is because everyone has different accents. You can drive 1 hour in any direction, north, south, east, west, any direction, and you're gonna hit another community with a different accent. Imagine the UK government or our Mary Queen comes out and says to everybody, okay, oh, you beautiful people, you're gonna have to speak the Queen's English. Imagine that. That is
Would
just
people take
stupid.
that?
People won't, first of all, people won't take that. But second of all, us in the free world, in this developed country with educated backgrounds, we know something like that is just straight dumb. You don't want everything to be the same. You know, you want different stuff. You want a fusion of food as well, fusion of language, a fusion of culture. That is what life is about.
The other day, I had, this is true, Mexican rice and beans topped with kimchi, and it was
Mm,
phenomenal.
mm.
It was phenomenal. That's how
See,
you get mixing of society and culture.
and that's how we advance together as one happy community on this planet. This bloody CCP, they're fucking up everything.
I actually did some research into this, the languages that the Communist Party is destroying. So some of these languages are Mandarin for our listeners is a relatively recent language. It's actually a constructed language that was brought in by the latest dynasty of China, the Qing dynasty. And languages like Fujianese, Hakka, Hokkien,ese Cantonese, they're much more ancient and they have a link back to the ancient forms of Chinese of because the area of China, the Sinitic language groups, they had multiple language families, just like the European languages. There are multiple families within Europe of languages. There are also multiple Sinitic languages. And wiping away these languages, you're really wiping away ancient traces of human history. I believe this is a crime against humanity. You're destroying knowledge and culture from the earth. This is the collective treasure of humanity. But they're doing it. I
Hmm.
can't say that you can't do that because they are doing that. So they
Hmm.
obviously can do that. Um, Fortunately, we have some overseas Chinese who are maintaining those languages,
Hmm.
and hopefully we can record so that we understand the speech and we record the writing. But that's
Hmm.
really sad. We're destroying what used to be a live language. It's ancient, but it's alive, and now it's only going to exist in books to be
Hmm.
studied by students in universities and professors. It's really
Hmm.
sad.
Hmm.
It's really sad.
You see, over in Brazil, they have the Amazonian tribes that even their president, who is not very bright, he's not very bright because he doesn't believe in the coronavirus. He thinks it's fake and it's just some kind of flu. But then he's been sick like 2 times now, I think. Even they recognize the uniqueness of these Amazonian tribes, and they've got policies and laws in place to try and leave them alone and let them live their life. The CCP, however, aren't even doing that. And this is why we do this show. We want to voice out loud the dumbness and the stupidity and the cruelty that comes out from the CCP. If only, bruv, if only there was a way we could get our platform to be made available over in China and have the citizens hear about it. Educate them because they got 1.4 billion people, and I will go as far as to say half of them don't even know all the bad stuff that is that the government is actually doing, because there's just so much mixed messages and propaganda being spilled out everywhere from all outlets that the CCP has, and it's confusing. It's not their fault. If I was living there, I would be confused as well, bro.
I think if we could broadcast to China and get through the people there, I think that would be great. I would love to tell the Chinese people. I want to tell them that we are on your side. We are on your side. We want you to be free. You know, the Chinese people could achieve amazing things. Look at what happens when you give the Chinese people a free speech, open society.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Taiwan, democratic
Mm-hmm.
society. In the case of Hong Kong, it was an open society, free speech. Look at what the Chinese people made Hong Kong the world center for financial
Mm-hmm.
transactions.
Mm-hmm.
Taiwan, the world center for microchips and high technology computer silicon research.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what the Chinese people can accomplish when they have free speech and when they are allowed to think for themselves rather than being scared of being locked up or taken away by police in the middle of the night, getting a knock at the door because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, they upset some important communist guy or maybe the police just had whatever reason. That we've seen stories where some local police chief saw a beautiful woman and he had her husband arrested, and then you know what happens next in the story, right?
What happened, bro?
Well, well, there are technically unconfirmed reports, but yeah, he had her husband arrested, and she then came out and said that she was held down by policemen and raped.
Oh, that's
Well,
tragic stuff.
you don't have rule of law in the society. You have rule of law. You know, it's a law of the jungle. And if some important policeman in the Communist Party rocks up to your house and says, "You know what? I like your wife," and you say no,
No,
then you're
no,
gonna
you
get it.
can't do that.
Well,
Not in this
they've
day and age.
they've got the guns and they run the country like it's a prison. It's an open air prison. And the Communist Party, they're the prison guards. And the top leadership of the Communist Party, you know, they're the prison chiefs. They're the wardens. That's how they're treating the Chinese people. Prisoners.
I would like the opportunity to grab these guys by the neck and say, hey, what if it was your wife? What if it was your daughter?
Yeah, that's I don't even know. I
Mm,
don't even know what they'd
stupid
say.
people, man. I mean, these CCP pawns, they're just, man, they're just mindless drones. Mindless drones.
Karma. If people believe in karma, I think you can't do all this evil shit and get away with it. It'll catch
Mm,
up. It'll catch up to you. You can't do it forever.
mm. Man, it's a crazy year. So much shit just happening all around the world. 2020 is really becoming an orgy for global civic engagement. Sweaty, oily, and violent orgy. We've been
Oh
talking a
my
lot
god.
about the CCP, bro, but there are other protests and major stuff happening around the world, over also in Europe. Over the past month, Belarus has been heaving with protest, which has not even peaked yet, man. But the violence feels like it is peaking, or there is more to come.
So what are they protesting about?
They're protesting against the current leadership, this guy named Alexander Lukashenko. He's ruling the country, or he used to rule the country with, it was just basically like a authoritarianism. He was in
I see.
power for 26 years.
I see.
26 years, man. This
I,
was his
I assume he
sixth.
won all of those elections.
Man, this was the sixth election that he won.
He's a man of the people.
Man, rigged stuff. He's never won an election less than 77% of votes. In the last one that occurred last month, he won that with a bit over 80%, which is utter rubbish because the people, they don't want him. There's an opposition that came up. This this woman, the opposition leader, her name is Svetlana Shikhan.
Tikhanovskaya.
And she is a human rights activist and the wife of an activist, Sergei.
Uh, Tikhanovsky.
Her husband was a candidate for the same election until his arrest on the 29th of May, after which she announced her intention to run in his place. So she was not a politician, bruv. She was just like a blogger. He was like a blogger. And through their blogs, they became really popular and they realized, a lot of these people, they're really against Lukashenko. They're over his reign. They want a change of government, but they want a fair and free election to change the government, which he is not allowing. He came into power the first time through free, fair election. However, the following five elections, all of them has been rigged in some way or other, either through the ballot boxes or either through pressuring and making his opponents disappear. This is not like politics like you and I have in our free countries. This is like this is like the mafia, man. When they want their opposition gone, they're silenced. They get taken
Just
out.
disappeared.
They just get, man, they're gone. This is crazy stuff. So let's talk
Dictatorship.
about absolute dictatorship. That is right. That is the word. So on the 9th of August, they had their election day. What happened on this day was internet got blocked. The internet went down, bro. Like how does a whole country's internet go down? Well, it went down because their internet is owned by this company, a state-owned company called Bell Telecom, who have a monopoly over the whole infrastructure. And they sent these deep packet inspections, DPI, and they flooded the system. The system had no idea what to do, and it succumbed to the pressure and it folded. That night, okay, immediately after the polling closed, Lukashenko came out and said he won with a landslide victory, 80.1% his way, and only under 10% went the other way to Svitlana. That is just stupid stuff. So there was an immediate reaction in all major cities: Brest, Minsk, Vitebsk, Grodno, Mazar, Pinsk, Gomel, and Babruysk. At first, it all started off peaceful with some blockades and stuff, but then it turned really violent because the law came out. The law enforcement agencies came out and they tried to stop it, and the people, they're very angry. They want change. Just like what's happening over in the US over for you, things got out of control. No one knows what the real numbers were that turned out. However, in Brest, 5,000 people turned out to protest. Now, 5,000 people, that's not small protest, right?
Absolutely not.
It's not small at all. And guess how the law enforcement agencies dealt with them?
Was it with a brutal attack?
Damn right, brutal attack. They so brutal. It's not like over in the US they shoot people with rubber bullet and water cannon. I mean they do that here too, but they dropped hand grenades on them.
Hand grenades.
They blew people up with hand grenades, bro.
What in God's green?
It
Hand
was
grenades on civilians.
hand grenades on civilians.
This is
This
going
is
to
the
result in
night.
civil war.
Well, man, this was 1 month ago already. You know, that night in Brest. Bear in mind, this is still election day night, on the 9th of August. In Brest, 3,000 people got arrested that night.
Right.
50 people ended up in hospital. One died. And also, on top of that, on election day, there's been reports of a handful of people that got arrested at polling stations. Imagine that. You turn up to a polling station just to vote, and you get arrested for trying to vote. This is crazy stuff. So
And
let
this is the 21st century.
21st century, 21st, this is 2020 dictators. This is what they do. Now, in the first week post the election,
Right.
whole range of messy stuff happened. You can use your imagination, and I'll just run through some things. Car raids, okay, driven by civilians or protesters who are angry and upset. They drove their cars into police officers. Crazy. M-
People are
Meanwhile,
resisting. What did they think would happen? I guess just that they could oppress people with no consequences. This is
mm,
terrible.
it's
This
like a
is
kettle. The kettle has just got all this pressure, all the steam's coming out, and it's gonna blow. Svetlana, she decides to flee to Lithuania, amongst all this chaos.
right.
And you can imagine why. It's not that she's scared of the people, she's just scared of retaliation from Lukashenko. She could have
I mean,
been assassinated.
the
Imagine that.
government would disappear her, poison her,
Exactly.
dump her in a river, something.
Exactly. Just imagine going to bed at night knowing that all this commotion, all this mayhem, all this madness is happening out there, and it could be you. You could not wake up. Maybe you might not wake up that morning. Imagine that, man. These protesters, they adopted a similar strategy to the protests over in Hong Kong, and that is to be like water. So instead of forming big masses of groups roaming the street and protesting and being one massive target that allows the law enforcement agencies to, again, maybe throw another hand grenade in there. They split up into smaller groups and used guerrilla tactics and popped up all around the cities in protest, just like over in Hong Kong. Hong Kong protests have really led the way in how modern rallies are to be conducted. The government's riot police, AMAP, also known as OMON. Now, I don't know what this stands for. It's all European kind of language. They use internal troops. They use their anti-terrorist elite special force, and all of them participated in the suppression of the protests in Minsk. They used ambulances to disguise and get through the protest lines. They used ambulances, bro. They drove past the protesters' lines and they shot them in the back.
With ambulances.
They used the ambulances as cover. These are the riot police over there. They disguised themselves as paramedics and they
This is
hopped into
horrific.
ambulances and they drove past them to get, because the protesters have essentially created blockades. Okay, they've cordoned off sections of the city and they said, look, this is our area. This is a safe area where we can protest, because they don't trust the government. And they decide to get into the back of ambulances and go, hey, we're paramedics, get behind their lines and then shoot people up. This is straight up war, bro.
It's crimes of war.
Exactly. This is genocide. A poor guy, Gennady Shutov, he got brain damage during one of these kind of conflicts. He had brain damage. He was in a coma a few days. Unfortunately, he passed away. Another man in Gomel, he got detained, right? He got thrown in the back of a police van, whatever you want to call it, and they left him there. He died of heat exhaustion. People are just dying, bruv. Lukashenko, meanwhile, he asks Russia for help. He goes, hey, Putin, you got to help me flee. Russia recognizes the situation. However, they don't really want to get involved. I'll get into that point later on.
I'm interested to see why.
Hmm. Meanwhile, Lukashenko, on that day, he's saying, look, no other elections. He's telling the people, I will not do another election. I am in power. I won it fairly, which is all total lies. He even says that NATO forces will come and back him up. What a straight up lie, man. So Lukashenko, he he decides to organize a rally from pro Lukashenko supporters. He claimed that 65,000 people came out in support of him. But the official reports from journalists around are saying that, only 5,000 came out. And in against him, because of him saying this rally, another march was organized, and that was about 100 to 220,000 people, man. Nearly 220,000 people marched out on the streets against Lukashenko. These are some big protests. That was just the first week post election. In the second week, Lukashenko said, look, if you guys want to remove me, you're going to have to kill me because I'm staying.
That was not a wise choice of words.
A. When you're like a dictator and you're disillusioned, and you've been in power for 26 years, bro, you're gonna say some stupid stuff. And he's just come out and he's just like, look, man, you guys want me gone, you're gonna have to kill me. He's just a bad man. So in retaliation to that, the people were smart. The people were getting organized. It was a countrywide strikes. Their steel factories shut down. All major factories shut down. Broadcasting networks. They were cutting out ads. It was like countrywide strike. In the third week, more rallying. We're talking like 250,000 people rallying. The military got involved and he was filmed. Lukashenko was filmed in his palace with his son wearing a bulletproof vest and holding AK-74Us. Now, AK-74Us, they're like a smaller version of our bigger AK-47s. Okay, they're like the
They're a
machine
good-looking
gun.
gun. I've
Well,
seen
then
these
they're nice,
74U.
good looking. Yeah,
They're
man.
they're attractive guns.
Yeah, man. They're like they're the you know up close and personal kind of defense weapons. Anyway, he
And
was filmed
what did he want?
holding no magazines. He had no
No
magazines,
magazine.
but he was walking around with his gun in a bulletproof vest, waving it around.
But what's he gonna do with the gun if there's nothing in it? Then no clip?
I don't think he's ever shot a gun in his life.
Oh. Oh my god.
He issued a statement in which he threatened the dismissal of school teachers who do not follow state ideology. So he's like the CCP man. He's taken propaganda to the next level and he wants it disseminated across all the schools and teachers to fall in line. But these teachers, they're smart. You know, these Belarusians, they know what's going on and they're opposing it. They want to teach the real things to their children. Now, in the fourth week post election, Lukashenko, the man, he celebrates his 66th birthday. He
Is that really the
organizes.
right time?
But like he's a dictator. It doesn't matter. He
It
just
doesn't matter.
he doesn't matter. You got hundreds of thousands of people protesting and rallying. You got law enforcement beating people up, shooting people, throwing hand grenades into the crowd, right? He wants to celebrate his birthday.
Fair enough.
So the government, the ministers and officials, they create a program, a national program to celebrate. Vladimir Putin from Russia even gives him a call and congratulates him and says happy birthday. This is crazy.
Happy birthday to the clown.
Happy fucking birthday, man.
I mean, is it that happy? The country's on fire, but okay, why not? Get a call.
Yeah. Obviously, more rallies came out in protest of these so-called national celebrations. Law enforcement or security forces now, they decide to send out tanks. They're sending out tanks to stop the people. Now the people are smart, they're well organized. They created gifts to place at government buildings and Lukashenko's many residences. These gifts were cardboard cutouts of a cockroach. Big cockroaches or some animals or feces, they're just cardboard cutouts. And they place them at the door of all these buildings. Now, Russia. Russia has interest over in Belarus. Putin has interest. In contrast to Lukashenko's 26-year reign, Putin's only been in power 20 years. So
There's a big
Lukashenko
difference.
it's a big difference. 6 years on top. Lukashenko, he's been a dictator for longer. So in Putin's eyes, Lukashenko's isolation from the West, has largely kept him in Moscow's orbit, even while he has remained a temperamental partner. Moscow's desire before the election was to see Lukashenko sufficiently weakened to further pressure him into integrating his country into Russia as part of a union state. This was a pet project of Vladimir Putin. So far, Moscow has largely left Lukashenko to manage his crisis on his own and does not appear ready to really protect him because they do not want to turn a protest movement against Lukashenko into one against Putin as well. So they're wisely just stepping aside right now and just looking in. But Belarus is deeply important to Putin. If Lukashenko goes, Russia will try to be a part of that process, either by negotiating his exit or seeking to join discussions of what may come next. Russia would also like to cultivate pro Russian politicians in the country and use economic levers such as natural gas and oil prices, as well as trade, to influence policy. You see, above all, Putin will seek guarantees that Belarus keeps its agreements with Moscow and does not seek any kind of integration with the European
NATO, the
Union.
European Union.
That's right.
Okay.
That may be difficult if elections are open to a wider field. It is easier, with a dictator in charge.
More predictable, right? You just got to negotiate with one guy.
That's right. You see, Belarus, it was used to be part of the Soviet Union. And Vladimir Putin, he still wants everything back to the old Soviet days. He wants that power, he wants that control.
Easier said than done.
hmm Recent United Nations statements, man, they've come out and they said that there have been over 450 cases of violence, torture, women being raped, and children being abused in this whole last month. Journalists have been jailed,
Children being abused.
women being raped. Like, these are law enforcement people, but they don't operate like normal police.
I mean,
They all
it sounds like they're operating like normal police.
maybe in the contrast to what you are seeing experiencing over in the States.
I'm not drawing that comparison. I'm just saying it sounds like when you mention this stuff, police across the world they get involved in this.
Hmm. It's been really bad over there, and the European Union, they're looking to impose sanctions on Belarus.
And what do you think this will lead to? Do you think that Lukashenko can hold power? I think if his economy starts to suffer, how long can he hold power before the people around him say, "Listen, you're more trouble than you're worth. You got to leave."
I don't think he's gonna hold power. The
Not
movement,
not
the
for long.
number of people against him is just too big right now. And we're talking like few 100,000 people that are actively out there protesting and fighting on the streets. Okay, that is a small number when you compare it to the Hong Kong protests, which saw at some points 1 million people out on the streets. And
Right.
this is why I keep saying about the CCP. China has 1.4 billion people. Can you just imagine 10 or 20% of them rise up against the CCP? But they're not doing that. So it makes you wonder, one, do they agree with the CCP? Or two, they actually don't know what is all the bad that's happened that their government is doing. And three, maybe they're just too scared. But honestly, man, you
Probably a
got one
combination of all three.
combination of all three, fine. But law of averages say you got 1.4 billion people, you can't have 90% being straight pussies. That just doesn't make sense to me.
What I would say, if I could make one contrast, the police in Belarus are being pretty brutal. But if they were the
More than
Chinese
brutal. This
police,
genocide, bruv.
if it was the Chinese police or the North Korean police, because there's not much difference between the two,
hmm
they would have killed everybody and then
mm
killed their family members too, even the ones
hmm
that didn't attend the protests.
mm. It's very
Um,
strange, right? When you think about the mindset of these police.
I
See,
guess as long as they
some
get paid, they don't care about shooting their own people.
but it's not just their own people. You may be shooting your own relatives. I have
They
to
got their
say though,
money. That's enough.
true. I have to say though, over in Belarus, not all the police are against the protesters. These are the anti-terrorist units. These are like the special forces. These are like real trained killers who are doing this to the citizens. A lot of your regular beat patrol police officers, they've been seen and they've been recorded and photographed and filmed in supporting the protests. They've been letting the protesters through their blockades. These really are just a small unit of the specialized forces, the riot police, who are doing this real kind of damage to the people.
Riot police are usually chosen specifically for their brutality and their loyalty and following orders.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they're just machines, I guess. Their commander tells them there's a crowd of people there, break them,
Hmm.
and they will break bones.
Hmm. On the topic of Russia, they've been making the news again out in the Western media. The Russian FSB, formerly known as the KGB, they poisoned the main opposition leader to Putin, Alexei Navalny, and he was poisoned this week with Novichok. Did you hear about this, man?
Yeah, this Novichok, isn't that what they released into your country and killed that? Didn't they assassinate some people and then also some innocent
Hmm.
bystanders? I should say innocent, but the person they assassinated was also innocent. They assassinated bystanders and the former spy, right, with this
Hmm.
Novichok agent.
That's right, bro. two
Th-
years ago, we there was two defectors, two known defectors from the Russian government that came over to the UK seeking a better life. They were sitting in the park having a sandwich, and they got poisoned with Novichok. It was really unfortunate. However, one did manage to survive. A woman. No, her body is scarred, but she did manage to survive. Alex, Alexei, he got poisoned while in an airport, and that flight ended up getting deferred, and he was airlifted to Germany, where he's in a Berlin hospital. Now, the doctors over there in Berlin, they're the ones that have come out. They've done the blood tests, they've done all that stuff, all the assessments, and they've come out and they said Novichok is the agent that was, the poison in his body.
And I assume they're trying to send a message by using such a high profile poison, not making it look like an accident. They could have made it look like an accident, but it sounds like they're doing this to make an example out of him.
That's right. I mean, Novichok was created in Russia originally. Can't remember in what decade it was exactly. They're very proud of this poison. They use it in a lot of assassinations, and it's made its way into a lot of Hollywood films. It's really popular.
Does Putin think that he can scare the population by doing this?
Don't know what Putin was really thinking about, right? This guy is just an opposition, and he wanted to get rid of him, and he wanted to get rid of him maybe in such a public way.
To send a message.
Send a message to the world, don't fuck with me. You fuck with me, I'm not only gonna kill you, right? But I'm gonna do it in such a way that people are gonna think, man, this stuff is just too crazy. It's just like in the films. Like the FSB, man. They've got a unit, a special unit of spies who is all women and all beautiful women.
I did not know that. But please continue. Where is this going?
Maybe it's maybe it's something that we can't discuss on air, and maybe we should discuss it off air at some point when we have a few drinks in our hands.
I'm open to the discussion as long as we don't get assassinated by this
I,
team of all female, beautiful KGB agents.
man, I think at some point you and I are gonna have to invest in bunkers for all the shit that we're saying on air.
I am worried that no, I'm not really that worried. I'm in the States. Nobody's ever going to
Freedom of
come here.
speech, bro.
I can say whatever I want, and the Chinese government can't stop me because I'm an American and my freedom of speech is guaranteed by the Bill of Rights. And if they start killing people on American soil, it could end up in World War III. And I'm just not that valuable to risk World War III. You, on the other hand, you're not as safe as you think you are.
Very true, bro. But at the end of the day, my balls, they're bigger than the shaft itself. I got gorilla balls, bro.
I want to highlight this to the listeners. Despite the fact that Dr. Wagwan, you live in a country that has assassinations from, superpowers,
Hmm.
superpowers just assassinating people in the
Just
street.
2 years ago.
Yeah, and your government doesn't seem to do much to stop it. You still continue to do what you do. That's what makes you brave. I'm in the States. My government will never allow assassinations in the streets. It will send nuclear weapons if so much as an attempted assassination takes place on American soil.
Hmm.
But you do this despite all of that. That's what makes you brave.
Because
That's brave.
I listen to our glorious Queen Elizabeth. She says, "Keep calm and carry on." So I'm gonna carry on.
More power to you, doctor.
Hey, some funny French news. There was a crime that went down over in France this week, in a southeastern city of Lyon. Thieves made off with 9 million euros, bruv, in a money heist.
9 million euros?
9 million euros.
Where did they steal it from?
They stole it. They did an attack on armored trucks, armored
Right.
security vehicles. No one got injured. But you know what was the funny thing of how they did it? Okay? They did it as you would. Two vans blocked the armored vehicle, one in front and one in back. Now, they didn't use explosives like in the Hollywood movies to blow open the doors and take the bags of cash. These vehicles, they're all fitted with security codes. And these security codes are supposed to change for each run that they go on. But this particular vehicle had a permanent code. So the thieves had the code and they just plugged it in and boom, door swung open.
Was this sounds like the Italian job? Sounds like they could do a movie out of this one. You'd need
Man,
about 100 yeah, 100 minutes of prep time, and then the final heist, like
that's right.
Ocean's 11, 9 million euros. Except the thieves are go back to some I don't know where they would go. I guess I'd
Mm,
spend it on some beautiful Spanish countryside, maybe
that's right, bro.
enjoy Spanish
If it,
food,
if they're gonna make a
Spanish
movie
wine.
out of this, they'll make it. This will be number three because they got attacked the same way over in 2016 and again in 2017.
Is this
So
an inside job?
it must be an inside job over the last handful of years.
And they still haven't learned their lesson.
Mm, funny stuff, man. They just want to keep going. It was 9 million here, about 6 million before, and about 4 million before as well. It's a pretty good career, don't you think?
It sounds pretty lucrative. Where do I
Mm.
sign up?
Hey, also funny news in the UK. Have you heard? Our UK Board of Trade, they've decided to take on a new advisor. This new advisor is a guy named Tony Abbott, who used to be a prime minister
Tony
in
Abbott.
Australia.
I knew.
Yeah, Tony Abbott, man. He was known for eating an onion on camera.
What, like in a sandwich?
No, bruv, like an apple. He bit into it like an
What?
apple.
What? He
Yeah,
ate an onion like an apple.
yeah,
What does
man.
that even mean? You can't do that. That's not. Did he
I
think it was
don't
an apple?
I
Did
don't
it
know
look?
what the context was, bro.
Did was was he doing it as a dare, or he just like pulled an onion out of a sack and he's like, I'm just gonna bite this
Um,
apple.
I don't know. This a strange guy, this Tony Abbott.
Well, maybe it's a custom in Australia. What did you check? Like maybe
We need no. We need to ask. We need to make some phone calls and say, hey, you guys over there, do you
maybe they
guys
eat
eat onions
onions.
like apples?
Because I will tell you this. I did not know that you could eat cucumbers raw. But then I saw it demonstrated to me to bite a cucumber just like biting off the head of a carrot. And it was great. And now I do that all the time. So maybe I should try eating the onion like an apple. Maybe it
Man,
was a special onion.
who knows?
And this man is the minister for trade now of your country.
Well, the Board of Trade wants to take him on, and there's been a lot of opposition against it. A
Why is
lot of
that?
people's because this guy. So, according to our media, the journalists are saying that the ministers and officials are saying that Tony Abbott is a misogynist.
Do we have any evidence of that?
I think there's been interviews of him saying stuff against women. He's also known not to be a supporter of the LGBT community. He's against all of that. And overall, he's just not a very bright person. But for some reason, our lovely Prime Minister Boris Johnson, he wants him on the Board of Trade.
I will say one thing in this man's defense. I didn't know that he eats onions, by the way. I'll take your word for it. I don't condone the eating of onions, but I'll take your word for it. Um, I don't know too much about his stance on women or LGBT, but I do know that when Australia had their bushfires, I remember distinctly reading an article, and one of the people at the front lines was Tony Abbott. This prime minister, former prime minister, was putting himself on the line, uh, front lines fighting fires, and he could have been burned alive. He was covered in soot and ash, and he was rotating in and out. So he wasn't there for a photo op. He was actually working the hoses, and one of their other former prime ministers, Kevin Rudd, I believe, was running around Australia looking for donations for the fires. I'm not sure what happened to the other prime minister, Malcolm Turnbull. Um, I don't know what he was doing at the time of the Australian bushfires, but I just don't know about it.
Man, all their prime ministers never got to serve a full term. I think
Right,
Tony Abbott never served a full term either.
interesting. So,
Funny stuff, man. Funny stuff. A guy eats an onion, and we decide to take him on board as an advisor. What's he gonna advise? We're gonna find out in the future.
I can't
Yo,
answer that question.
you righteous people out there. In the meantime, keep safe, keep doing what you're doing, and join us next time to digest all the week's madness again. Much love to you all. Later, Professor Sanchez.
Adios, doctor. Adios, my friend.
Oh partigiano, portami via. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 partigiano, portami via, che mi sento di morire. E se muoio da partigiano, oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, 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 e se muoio da partigiano,